let me know. Obviously not Superman 4.
You didn't do Superman 4, did you?
Thankfully not, no.
No, I didn't think you did, but I suppose that might be a question as to why you didn't do Superman 4.
Yeah, sure. It was, first of all, I wasn't asked to do it. Right. It was a whole different team. The Salkins they had sold the rights by then to another company, and then it was a different team, which another group that was noted for their frugality, let's say. Yeah, they like to do things cheap, so they wouldn't have paid for me to go over to England and to do the movie. I was quite happy because it's not my favorite Superman movie.
No, I think it had a lot of potential, which is probably why the fans quite like it today. But because I think we were going to bring everybody back from the first 3 films from the crew, but obviously then the budget went to pieces, and we thought, well, we'll get some people in instead. But
absolutely, yeah.
But that's filmmaking for you. How's my picture coming through, Colin? Am I my picture quite good? My connection okay?
Yeah.
Because you're coming through just a bit stuttery, just sort of jerking slightly the picture. It's sort of
all right here, so it must be a connection somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
As long as you can hear me.
Oh yeah, I think we'll get by just fine. That's no. It won't stop us. Okay, so I'm just checking.
I'm making you a bit smaller. Maybe that helps.
Sorry?
I make your image a bit smaller. That might help with the.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm just going to see if anybody's emailed me to say they have trouble logging on or anything. Okay. We've just gone past 7, but still waiting for a few people to log on. So I will just give it 2 minutes more, and then we'll get started, and obviously people can catch up if they're running late. Okay. I know we're competing with the tennis over here in the UK, so maybe finishing watching that perhaps.
Big game tomorrow.
Yeah, just a little bit, yes. So,
I'll be watching.
Yeah, I'm not normally a football fan, but yes, I won't be missing that one.
I don't follow it that closely, but when it's England, you have to.
Oh yeah. I'll watch all the big matches.
Yeah.
Okay, how are we doing for time? Let's give you 1 minute more. So I'll just read out a comment from a gentleman called Ian, who's watching tonight. He just says, "Hi Colin, it's good for you to join us." So I think he's a fan of your work.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll make a start. So I just want to say to everybody watching either live or on YouTube, welcome to this Evening with Superman event. We're very honoured to be joined by Colin Chilvers, who won the Special Achievement Award for Special Effects for Superman the movie. Colin's other credits include X-Men, Battle Britain, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Superman 2, Superman 3. Is there any other comments, any other credits, Colin, that you would like to mention to that list?
I guess one that is related but not to effects is directing Michael Jackson in Smooth Criminal.
Yes, I have got a little question about that later on. The Rocky Horror Picture Show, of course. K-19, The Widowmaker is I think a good film with Harrison Ford and Liam Neeson.
Yeah, I did some I think, a movie called Condor Man, which seems to be quite a cult movie now.
Mhm.
Disney movie called Condor Man
Yeah.
in 1980.
Mhm.
Saturn 3, 200 Motels.
Yeah.
I did some work on Tommy, the rock opera, and Bride of Chucky, a movie called Driven with Sylvester Stallone,
Yeah.
and Pacifier, and Shoot 'em Up, which
Oh, very good.
plus a whole lot of commercials. I
Yeah.
used to direct a lot of commercials.
And do you like to direct in the commercials? Is that uh, something that's particularly how's that sort of different from doing, say, directing Smooth Criminal, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I started off in effects, and then when I moved to Canada, I started to direct commercials in Canada, and then got a contract to direct them in Los Angeles,
Mhm.
which is how I got to directing Michael Jackson in Smooth Criminal. So, I mean, obviously the difference is commercials is maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks of work, whereas a movie might be a year or a year and a half's work.
Yeah.
So they were quick and easy to do, and I enjoyed them. I did mostly toy commercials, which was a lot of fun to do, and a few beer commercials and car commercials, but mostly toys.
So what was it like directing Smooth Criminal and obviously working with Michael Jackson?
Great. I was almost 2 years working on that with Michael in Los Angeles, and it was he was such a creative person, and besides that, a nice guy. So it was an honor to work with somebody that at the time we worked together, he was like at the top of his game. He was amazing, and well, I think we shot the movie and the spot in 18 weeks. It took to shoot that, which was a long time for a music video.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. Something that you never forget. It was a great pity when he passed away.
It was, wasn't it? A huge shock.
Yeah. And of course, the latest thing was this week, Richard Donner passed away, the director of Superman.
Yes.
Another great loss to the movie business.
So what was it like working with Mr. Donner?
He was great. He was a wonderful person. I mean, he's so enthusiastic, and he knew exactly what he wanted to get out of that movie and how it should be directed and how things should go. And the fact that you had to believe a man could fly, and that was, he would do anything and everything he could to make sure it was right.
Yeah.
Amazing guy, amazing man.
So what was your feeling when you were brought on board the film? There must have been quite tremendous pressure, given that you needed to make a man fly. How did you feel? How did you go about achieving it?
Well, obviously, we look back on what had been done before, and it had been very successful, mostly TV shows and so forth. So we against, I mean, these days they have computers, so it's fairly easy to do things. But in those days, we didn't have computers. We had optical effects. So we had to devise ways that we could make him look like he was flying.
Yeah.
Which, we had blue screen, we had this front screen projection, Zoptic projection, and wire flying. And I think the biggest thing of all was having somebody that actually looked like he could fly, and that was Chris. I mean, he was incredible. He was amazing. And the big deal then as well was we had to hang him on the thinnest possible wires that we could find. That be strong enough, but wouldn't be seen. I mean, these days they just paint them out easily, but in those days it was very difficult to do things like that. So that was a challenge. So when it all came together, mainly because of Donna and also because of Chris. I mean, he just looked like he was flying.
Oh yeah. So what was your feeling when you saw the finished film at the premiere? What was it like to see it all come together?
Oh, we actually did a screening. We were about 6 months into production, and Richard did a screening at Pinewood for the crew with what we had shot already, which included the shot where Superman first becomes Superman in the Ice Palace, and he flies towards the camera and flies around the camera, and that, I mean, you couldn't help it when you saw that. Everybody, that was the crew, and only the crew in the screening. We all cheered, and like the hairs on the back of your neck went up. You knew it was going to be successful when you saw that happen. That happened to me as well on Superman 2 in Niagara Falls, when Chris hadn't flown for 6 months, and we were shooting a sequence at Niagara Falls when he goes over the falls to save the kid. And we had done some rehearsals with a stunt double, with a stuntman, and he came out to start shooting, and we said, you know, would you like to take a run to a rehearsal? And he said, no, let's just go for it. And he just took off, and it was amazing. I mean, he looked like he was flying. Incredible that he had that. Well, he was a pilot as well, so he knew what. When he's shooting the front screen projection, where he was on this very uncomfortable post that came through a screen that had a body mold on that he laid in, and that body mold could be manipulated in different angles and so on. But he knew that if he was flying, you didn't just fly dead straight. If you're like an airplane, you would always have to yaw a bit, and he would know exactly. Plus, the guy that was running the rig for me, that was manipulating Chris, he and Chris got such a rapport that they almost knew what each other was going to do. So he knew if Chris leant a certain way, that he would lean him a certain way. It was just, looking back on it, it's kind of magical to think that they had that kind of rapport. Same as him taking off and landing. Bob Harmon, the guy that did the wire flying for me, they knew exactly when to pull the wires to get him up in the air. Because it could have been, you can imagine, like if Chris bent down to leap off, and he leapt off, he didn't get pulled up in the air, just kind of bounced, it would look silly. So having that kind of, again, that rapport between two people was incredible.
Oh yeah. So what was the biggest, apart from obviously making the flying effects, obviously what was the biggest effects challenge? Because obviously you invented technology as the film went along.
I think it was trying to make it look real, that this guy was doing super things. No, I mean, he could lift a bus, or he could lift a car. What he had to do, had to look like it was real. It's very, I'm going to say, it's relatively easy to do effects where you're mimicking real life.
Yes.
But when you go beyond that, and you're trying to bring to life a superhuman feat, it's very difficult to do that and make it work and make it look like it's working. I mean, so you had to be, the whole job of effects is problem solving. Having to come up, you read the line in the script, and then it's up to you to decide the best way that you're going to approach to make it work for you or for the director. So that's, it's not always the obvious thing to do either. And I was lucky enough in a way to come through a stage in special effects when a lot of in-camera effects were still done, and that helped me a lot. As I said before, we didn't have computers, so everything had to be pretty much in camera, pretty much, other than the blue screen. But you think of that, I mean, one of the effects guys that did the optical effects, Roy Field.
Yeah.
Think of the challenge that Roy had when he was having to shoot Superman, who wears a blue outfit, against blue screen. I mean, they didn't use blue screen. I mean, the blue was the most sensitive color to be able to pull a map from, so they had to go blue screen. Well, that's a problem, right? Well, Roy worked out the fact that he had Superman's blue suit made in a slightly different blue to the chroma key blue, so that it would split from the blue screen, and then it was put back to the correct blue in post-production, you know, in colorization. So that was a challenge to just to come up with that. And then we had this thing with Chris where the cape would wrap around him, because if you put a wind machine on him, even a straight, like a linear wind machine, and the cape would wrap around him because the shape of his body would make the cape wrap around him, which of course would not look very good.
No.
So Les Bowie, who was a matte artist that was working with us, he came up with an idea to put this rig on Chris's back, which was a series of cams on a rod with a little tiny electric motor, and we used the tops of fishing rods.
Oh, right.
And they would move like this, and then the cape was attached to the fishing rods, and a little bit of wind as well, and that kept the cape going straight back from him, which was, you know, again, not what you would think you'd have to do when you begin the movie, and suddenly you come across this problem that you have to try and solve. So it was one whole series of continual problem solving.
Oh yeah, it sounds like it. I want to ask you, Colin, about you mentioned working with Roy Field. What was he like as a person to work with on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, he was great. He was a good friend. I mean, he was another great loss, I think.
Yeah.
Of the five people that got an Academy Awards for the effects, there's only two of us left now. That's Zoran Brisic and myself. No.
Yeah.
Derek Meddings, who was another great guy. One of the first jobs I ever got in special effects was working with Derek Meddings. Right.
Yeah.
On he did that kids series. What was it called? Thunderbirds.
Thunderbirds, yeah.
And I worked for Derek on Thunderbirds when I first started in the business.
Yeah.
So it was kind of nice to be able to work with him again. And it was everybody in the effects world in England at the time knew everybody else. So there was, you know, you knew the guys that you needed and the people that you wanted. And I had a really good crew working with me that had done lots of movies with me. So, you know, I felt comfortable that I could handle what we needed to do. But Roy was great. Dennis Coop, who was in charge of the photography on the flying unit, he was great. Les Bowie did matte paintings and matte shots, which were also good. Derek was great. So good, and everyone worked together. You know. Yeah.
As you mentioned Thunderbirds, do you have any particular memories of working on Thunderbirds you'd like to share?
Yeah, when I first arrived at the studio and I got the job, and they were doing a snow sequence. So Derek Meddings said, I'd like you to make some snow for us for this sequence. They're all miniatures, right? So it was, I was presented with a block of styrofoam, which was 8 feet long, 4 feet wide, and 2 feet thick, and a sanding machine to make snow. So I had to sand down this huge block of styrofoam to make snow. That was my first job on that movie, on that series, which was kind of cute.
I did have a question come in from Ian. Yeah. He wanted to know how you got into the business of film to begin with.
I got interested in it as a young kid. Two things one was my vivid imagination, because I've been lucky enough to read some books that I was given by an uncle, one being Carter on Mars, which was amazing. You know, if you ever read any of the Edgar Rice Burroughs Carter series, they're incredibly, you know, you can see it in front of you. And then I had some neighbors where I lived. I lived in Kentish Town in London at the time. I had a neighbor who had two young daughters. They were still about 3 or 4 years older than me, but they would take me to the Saturday morning matinees at the cinema.
Yeah.
And the matinees would be Superman and Flash Gordon and things like that. So I got even more interested in, as I grew up and got more into art. I kind of needed and wanted to know how they do these things. I always had this thing about taking things apart, trying to put them together. So mechanically, I could understand how things worked. So I went to art college for 3 or 4 years up in Hornsey College of Art. And then I tried to get into the movie business, which was not easy because I phoned up the union. I asked about getting a job. I was told that to get a job, you need to get in the union. So I called the union and they said, oh yeah, to get in the union, you need a job. So you kind of catch 22 immediately.
Yeah.
I finally cracked that because the only way you could get into the union in those days was that you went in as a trainee, because somebody that had the job would move up a level and then there was a gap at the bottom for a trainee. So I started off in the business as a trainee animation director.
Yeah.
And worked for a company called Stuart Hardy Films up at Boreham Wood. And they did mostly animation, which of course in those days was drawn animation, for government projects. They would take a piece of equipment and to show people how it would work, you'd have to animate it. And they were, because I guess I got that job because I had been to art school. The trouble was I found that they were so amazing artists with airbrushes, and I was just never going to get that good.
Right.
But being in that job and therefore being able to join the union, I was able to go for interviews for other jobs. And so the first interview I went for was on 2001.
Yeah.
That was I was working in Boreham Wood, and that was being made at MGM Studios, which was also in Boreham Wood at the time. So I went for an interview with the producer. We got along. It was actually a job as a junior in the art department. I got the job. I turned up on Monday morning and went to the art department, and the production designer, who had been on vacation, was back. And I walked in, he said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm your new assistant or PA, whatever you want to call it." And he said, "Oh, really?" And he left the office, and 10 minutes later, the production manager came back and said, "I'm sorry, but I've got to give you 2 weeks notice."
Oh.
Because evidently, which I can now appreciate, that job was not meant for somebody that was not known to the production designer. In other words, one of his relatives was due to get the job. So that was my first experience after being trying to get into the movie business for 2 weeks. I was out and back on the street, as it were. But I managed to go for another interview for the Battle of Britain.
Right.
And met most amazing person you could ever wish to meet if you wanted to be an effects guy, which was a gentleman called Glenn Robinson, who was an American that had been brought over to do second unit on the Battle of Britain.
Yeah.
And that guy went on to win 5 Academy Awards. So, you couldn't wish for somebody as wonderful as him to work for. And I worked for Glenn for 1.5 years. And, but even then, I mean, this is how quirky the movie business was and probably still is. I've only been on that movie for 5 weeks, and they ran out of money and shut the movie down.
Right.
But in that time, I met a guy called Morris Carter, who was an art director. There was an art director on the second unit, and we became to be buddies.
Yeah.
And he said, I know you want to get into effects. He said, and I have a good friend that has a company in Slough called Bowie Films.
Yeah.
And he said, I'll introduce you to Les, but if you like, why don't you come and work for me in the art department? I'm just about to start a movie called Robin Hood. And he said, you can work on that with me as a junior in the art department, and I'll introduce you to Bowie and maybe, see how you get on with it. And as a result of working on that movie, I became friends with Les Bowie as well for 20 years after that, and went to work for Les Bowie. And at that time, Les Bowie or Bowie Films pretty much serviced most of the movies that were going, other than the really big movies But the smaller movies, they used to do all the ham horror films and things like that. So I worked for Les for a few years until I finally decided it was time to go. Actually, I didn't decide to go on my own. I went to work for another effects guy called Roy Wybrow. And Roy was a great friend as well. I mean, this is said it's a little tiny community those days, and did some movies with him, which were very interesting. You know, going to Venezuela in 1970, I think it was, for 3 months on a movie in the middle of the jungle that was Murphy's War. It was kind of baptism of fire, let's say. But it was good. It was interesting, and I mean the bad thing was being in Venezuela in the middle of the jungle for 3 months. The good thing was then going to Malta for 3 months, and that was just a beautiful experience. So, you know, I've been very lucky in that way.
Oh yeah. Sounds like it. So I was wondering how you got the job on Superman in the first place.
I think I forget what movie I just come off of. I think it was Rocky Horror. I think it was Rocky Horror. Anyway, the first production designer that was on that movie, whose name escapes me, Michael something or other. Anyway, he suggested me to the production manager, and I think one of the main reasons was everyone else was busy. I say that like modestly, but it gave me the opportunity to get started on the movie, and I then had to go out to Italy. Originally, they were going to make Superman in Italy. Yeah. So I went out to Italy to Cyd Child Studios in Rome to meet the director, Guy Hamilton.
Right. Yeah.
Got the job, and before I knew it, I was moving out to Italy to work on the movie. The only problem I only had one person that I could take with me at that time that spoke English. So I had a crew of 9 or 10 guys in Italy that couldn't speak English, and me and my guy that couldn't speak Italian. Luckily, we had an interpreter, so we got. And suddenly it was like, well, we're not going to do it in Italy anymore. We're going to move back. At one time, they were going to go to, like, I don't know, somewhere in Eastern Europe, but then they ended up going back to England, and we started off at Bray Studios, and then we moved to one time we were going to go to Shepperton, but we ended up in Pinewood, and at that time Guy Hamilton couldn't work in England because he had to. He was a tax exile because of the Bond movies, I guess, the money he made on the Bond movies. So they're looking for another director, and up comes Richard Donner, had just finished very successfully The Omen. Yeah. And so he was employed to do it, which was, I mean, who knew how wonderful it was going to be to have that guy directing it. Because I don't necessarily think that Guy Hamilton, who was English, had a kind of sympathy for the character as much as Richard Donner had.
So how long would you have been out in Italy before it all got moved about?
How what? Sorry?
Oh, so how long would you have been out in Italy before it all changed?
3 months.
For 3 months.
Yeah.
So what sort of stuff did you get done in Italy?
We were sort of experimenting on ways we could fly Superman. We made a radio-controlled Superman that could fly like an airplane, and we actually had some dummies made. This is before Chris Reeve wasn't even thought of at that time. Yeah. But we had some mannequins made, and we would stick a tube up the rear end of it and fire it off of a cannon. They talked about dropping somebody from an airplane, you know, with a skydiving and that kind of thing. None of it was really very practical, and it wasn't until we got back to Bray and to Pinewood that we really started to kind of zone in on the best way to make him fly, which of course was going to be wires, whether we liked it or not. But then I came up with this idea for this post that went through the screen, and that really worked very well.
And did you have much to do with Guy Hamilton when he was attached as a director? And did you get a sense of what his version might have been like?
Not really, no.
Hmm.
No.
So when you obviously moved into Pinewood, obviously John Barry was the production designer. Do you
Yeah.
remember John at all?
Oh yeah, John was great. I was going to, well, actually, he was good because he was so supportive, and he knew, as good production designers know, that we all have to solve these problems. You can't just design something and say deal with it. You have to be in combination with everybody else. Like we had to worry about wardrobe for Christopher, how we hung him on the wires, how we put him on the post, on the front screen post, how we did the cape. All of those things needed to be worked out between all the different departments. And John was exactly the same. He knew that we had some problems, and sometimes we had to build, like when Christopher spins through the earth to go under the ground, we had to build the set 15 feet off the deck, off of the floor of the studio to make that work. So everyone had to be in line with what needed to be done to help everybody else. And the top of that heap was, of course, Richard Donner.
Mm-hmm. Because did you have much to do with Elia or Alexander Solkind?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I ended up working for Elia again a few years later because I directed 5 episodes of Superboy for him, and also Bob Simmons, who was the production manager on the first 3 movies. And Elia, I still talk to Elia now and again. So they had a hard time, like everybody on that. There was, as you know, from probably, there was a lot of friction between Richard Donner and the Salkins and that, which they're producers. I've been through it myself when I directed with Michael Jackson. The producer wants you to spend this much money, and Michael wants to do this, and we're in the middle of it. So it's not easy to do that. But luckily for us, Richard was strong enough to be. I mean, I can remember during a lot of that, Warner Brothers was involved, of course. Yeah. And Warner Brothers sent a guy over, a gentleman, I think he's passed away, must have passed away by now. His name was Greenlaw. And he came over for 10 days to kind of be the in-between guy between them, and ended up staying for 10 months.
Right.
Charles, I think his name. He was a great guy. He was. I remember him being so amused one time because I bought a barbecue, and I'd asked Richard when he was there, when Greenlaw was there, the best way to barbecue something, and Charlie thought it was very amusing that here's a guy that blows up vehicles for a living asking how to barbecue a steak. So we had some good times in that respect. And Richard, oftentimes, if you had a really good week or a good effect happen, you'd find you got back to your office and there'd be a case of wine from Richard, just to appreciate, sure that he appreciated what you did.
Yeah.
Great guy.
So also just about some of the scenes in the movie, I was wondering about the destruction of Krypton with the rocket going up and Marlon Brando and what you remember from the Krypton scenes.
Well, I had to build these big crystals that came up through the ground, which we had to build special pneumatic rams to put them on. And then we had all this stuff dropping, and it was pretty frantic because obviously we only had Marlon Brando for a short period of time. Plus, at that time, you had a $10 million actor running around inside a set that was a live effects set. It's where these things came up through the ground. You had to have a breakaway floor. So you have to be careful that no one fell through the floor. Actually, the assistant director, Dusty Simons, who's a good friend of mine, actually was the best man at my wedding, he did fall through the floor once. Actually, not completely. We grabbed him before he disappeared.
Yeah.
We had fences around these areas when we were not shooting, and he walked over the fence to get across to something and disappeared.
So it must have been quite. Was Marlon Brando quite good to work with? And
Oh, he was great. Actually, poor devil, he had a terrible cold the whole time he was there.
oh right, yeah.
And it was interesting as an actor, and then obviously me becoming a director after that, to see the way he worked, because he didn't like to learn lines. So all around the set were these cue cards for him to read, which he was brilliant at it, but it was kind of interesting to watch that happen. I know that, of course, in those days, most people smoked as well, but when he finished his time on the movie, the people that were working closest with him, like his hair and makeup person, wardrobe person, he bought them all solid gold Dunhill lighters.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, which was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
No, he didn't have any problem with him at all. Any of the actors. I mean, we had Chris was obviously the one we dealt with the most, who couldn't have been better and easier to work with. I mean, he knew that we had not problems, but we had to make him look good. And he understood that sometimes that meant that he had to go through some rigorous things that he might not have wanted to go through, but he would do it just because he wanted to look good as well. Actually, the day he arrived in Niagara Falls to shoot Superman 2, which we hadn't seen him for 6 months, he called me and we myself and the rest of my crew there and Chris went out for Italian food that night to get caught up. Now, that's the kind of person he was. He was great.
Yeah, that's lovely. So fame didn't change him. It sounds like he kept down to earth and.
Not at all. Not at all. No.
How about Margot Kidder? What do you have main memories of Margot?
Yeah, she was great too. I mean, we dealt more with her, of course. Oh, actually, yeah. In Superman 1, she's going to get crushed by the car. So I had this rig built, which was a hydraulic rig that we could put the car in and squash the car. Literally, I mean, it was like a car crusher. So we had to make sure that she was going to be safe, and there was places that we could get at her and she could get out if she needed to. But then we had to dump all this crap on top of her. So, I mean, she was a trooper as well. And then, of course, when we got to Niagara Falls, she was in the river as well, which she went through it. But again, I can't complain about any of the actors that we had to do with.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you mentioned the car crash because I want to mention the helicopter rescue, because I think the helicopter wasn't originally going to drop and for Superman to catch. I think that was a last minute idea by Dick Donner. Was that because it was a last minute request?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a big deal really. I mean, obviously we built the helicopter from a wreck that we had bought. We had to change the motor on it because we wanted to make it as light as possible. And I had to lift it by the center of gravity, which of course on a helicopter is through the blades, through the center of the hub of the blades. So we rigged it up like that, but looking at it, the biggest problem I could see that we were going to have was the blades, which are like 30 feet long. To make it look like it's flying, they have to turn at quite a speed. So I didn't have the power in an electric starter motor to make them go that fast. Plus, that'd be dangerous. So I looked at some footage of helicopters because we're shooting at night, and spoke to Jeff Unsworth, the cameraman, and he agreed with me that really, with the blades going at their 300 rev a minute or whatever it was, really all you could see was the first 10 feet of them. After that, they're going so fast. And also it helped if they were shiny. because the light would flash off of them, which gave this feeling of speed. So I built a set of blades for the flying when it looked like it was taking off and moving, for 10 feet long. And then that I could spin fast, and they were highly gloss painted. And so, I mean, I still look at the sequence, you can't see there's not 30-foot blades on it.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, once it hit stuff, then we had to put the full-size blades on. But by that time, they were pretty much stopped. Then we had a set, I think the set was about 20 feet off the ground, like the landing pad. And then when it hit the side and fell over or started to fall, we had another set that was like 60 feet up in the air. So that you could do the looking up shots. And that, we built, on top of that, we built a hydraulic rig that held the helicopter that allowed it to be pushed forward and looked like it was going to drop. And then, of course, you know, we had miniature as well we could use. So the shot where you see the helicopter falling towards them is a miniature. And then once he grabs it, obviously that's the full size one. So, you know, again, no, I can't say one sequence was ever one specific effect. It was always a whole combination of it. It's going to be blue screen, front projection, out on wires. It just we had to develop it so that we had endless storyboard meetings where we could sit down and look at the storyboards, plan it out completely, and know what each person in the effects group was going to be doing.
What was the sequence that was the most challenging from your perspective to work on?
A helicopter.
Definitely helicopter.
Yeah.
And is that the sequence of the film that you're most proud of?
I think I'm proud of it all. I think it all worked so well. But, you know, I mean, it's just when you're making it, you're not even thinking about the end result. You're just trying to do the best you can at the time. So it was a lot of it was new to me. You know, I hadn't been in the business for that long. I think I'd only been in the business for 10 years at the time.
Yes.
And to be involved in such a huge production and then to end up with an Academy Award was, you know, incredible. I think I was one of the youngest effects people ever to get an Academy Award, which, you know, I'm very proud of. Of course, now I've got 2 nephews that have them.
Well, that's great, isn't it? It runs that talent runs in the family, so that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Could we see your Academy Award, Colin? Would that be okay?
I just happen to have it with me.
Oh, good.
There he is.
Oh, that's lovely. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite heavy, but it's. I mean that you can only dream of getting something like that when you work in the movie business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what was it like being at the? You remember being at the award ceremony and what it was like to hear your name called out?
Well, we knew we were going to get it.
Ah, right.
We've gone over. They have what they call in effects academy a bake-off. So they usually pick, because I'm in the academy and I am on the, you know, I'm on in the group that does the effects awards. They will pick 10 movies that they think might qualify for an effects award, a visual effects award.
Yeah.
And then in January, you're allowed to go over to the academy and they spend a night where they have a section of movies that you can put together to show the effects. And so you go and you can be questioned by members. This is the effects, visual effects people. That particular, and I didn't know, of course, when I went over there, but they have an option in visual effects of giving no award if they don't think there's any movie that deserves it. To choose 5 movies for that's then put before the whole academy, or they can decide that one movie is outstanding enough that it deserves the award, which is what happened to us that year. Luckily, we didn't have Star Wars against us.
Yeah.
And so we knew they told us we had it, but but going to the award ceremony was incredible. I mean, we had Steve Martin was the one that gave us our award, and just to go through, you know, going through the press rooms and then going to the after award ceremony ball or whatever they want to call it. You know, there was 10 of us sitting around and all had Academy Awards. It was quite amazing, incredible.
Well, wonderful. I just wanted to touch on a little bit more, Colin, on Richard Donner. I just wondered if you had a couple of favourite memories you'd like to share about him, or your feelings about his career, his films.
Well, I mean, he was incredible. Look at what he did after Superman, even. I mean, he did a lot. He shot a lot of Superman too, of course.
He did indeed.
Then he went on. I mean, the Mel Gibson movies that he did were incredible. He just if you look him up, which I did after he passed away, just to find out what he'd done before The Omen was incredible. I mean, all the TV shows that he'd done. He was born to be a director. He really was. Incredible guy. And I would see him, well, I'd see him every day when we were shooting, of course. Yeah. But then one of the things about his office, it was always available. You could go and see him and talk to him anytime you want. You didn't have to make an appointment, like some directors get a bit ahead of themselves as far as thinking that you need to get past their secretary or their assistant, but you could just walk into his office and just one of the nicest people. I mean, strict in as much as he knew what he wanted and he wouldn't accept anything less.
Yeah.
And he was also one of those guys you could say to him, you know, I think I can do better, and he would let you try again. And so there was no kind of presumption about him at all. He was a great guy.
So we did have a question come in. Did the script change a lot during your time on the production?
Not Superman 1, because it was kind of, well, Richard Donner kind of rewrote it, and he had a friend of his, whose name escapes me now. I can see his face, but I can't think of his name, who they did a lot of rewriting. But I think they did a lot of rewriting to kind of bring it up to the Superman image, which I necessarily wasn't. Yeah. But then once we got that, there wasn't many more changes. But they would also be open to things changing if they. Tom Mankiewicz, there you go. Yeah. Martin knows. One thing I do remember, which I was very chuffed with, is that the end sequence in Superman 1, where Superman flies in with Luthor and Otis and drops him off in the prison yard. Obviously, we were flying them in, and I was standing with Richard and Tom, and they were talking about the fact that, you know, it seemed a bit weak that the Superman should fly in with these two guys and drop them off. And then he says something like, you know, go around, leave it, whatever Superman says. So I said, well, and I just kind of threw this out almost impromptu. I said, you know, Luthor's been this sort of big head all the way through the movie, telling everyone how wonderful he is. Wouldn't he do it again here? Although he's although he's going to jail. And Tom quickly wrote a few lines, and away they went. And I thought that was a fitting ending to the movie, that this guy that had been such a pain in the ass throughout the movie as Lex Luthor was now telling everyone how wonderful he was as he was going to prison.
Yeah, that's a wonderful moment in the film. I think you should say, otherwise it would have felt perhaps a bit flat. But it was fun. But that was Donner. I mean, he was open to that. A lot of directors will tell you to go screw yourself, but he was open to any suggestions like that. Oh, that sounds wonderful. I've got some other questions that have come through. So I have a question. When you were creating your effects, was there one simple item in your special effects toolbox that you use time and time again, things that get you out of difficult situations? Is something existing or something that you invented for the film?
I think the only thing that I had that I could fall back on was what's up here.
Yeah.
to think about it and dream about it and work it out. I mean, I've always been somebody that I guess you would call a lateral thinker. So
Yeah.
if I can't think of the correct way that it should be done, I'll think of another way I can do it that will make it work. And we often have to do things like that in special effects.
Oh yeah, yeah. Martin's asked a question. So I'll get it in front of me a second. Yes, he was wondering whether you remember if the transformation when Clark jumps out the Daily Planet window was a mix of live action and miniature, or was it just live action? Do you recall that?
That was just live action against on-screen projection.
Okay, perfect. And also he asked about, because obviously you're making Superboy, obviously with Ida Solkind.
Yeah.
At that, in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, there was talk of a Superman 5 with Ida Solkind producing, and Chris Reeve was obviously quite interested. Did that ever, you hear any rumblings of that?
Never heard of it.
Hmm.
I didn't hear of it. To be honest, no.
I think it was something that Warner Brothers, when they started to take back control of their properties, they canned the film, unfortunately. But I think it would have been quite a good thing had they done it. But
it took 25 years to remake it.
Yeah.
An interesting fact was that when they made Superman Returns, which they made in Australia, my nephew was an effects supervisor on it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And Neil's Neil Corbold. And Neil had actually worked for me on 1 and 2 as well as a kid. I mean, he was a youngster then, but he was, and actually they had the same problem that we had with the cape on Superman Returns. And he phoned me up and asked me if I knew where the rig was that we'd used for Christopher. But it was long gone by then, but they had to build a new one, I guess. But that was kind of nice, 25 years on, that one of my nephews was working on it.
Oh yeah, it's a lovely link to have.
Yeah.
What is your opinion of the additional Superman films that came beyond the Chris Reeve films and TV series? Do you think that they work, or is it always the Chris Reeve?
I think I could sound a little biased towards the first 3. If I could, I mean, obviously the effects can be fantastic now because they got computer. I mean, that's the good news is they have computers and they can do anything they want. The bad news is they have computers and they can do anything they want. I mean, it just depends. You get a director like Donna that knew the limitations of what needed to be done to make the film look real. And then you get, somebody like Michael Bay, maybe, who goes, to my opinion, a little over the top with the effects that he does on his movies. So as much as I love the fact that we now have computers that can do anything, that has to be used to tell a story and not just for the sake of it being effects.
I mean, do you think that the fact the reliance on computers perhaps makes people not lazy, but there's less of a challenge, and therefore the end product is not as good as that? Is that perhaps fair?
Well, it's become more for people to say we'll fix it in post or we'll do it in post. But I know a lot of actors still prefer to do in-camera effects. And I know, for instance, one of my other nephews, Chris Corbold, he does all the Bond movies effects, the practical effects. And they always lean towards trying to do everything they can as practical and in-camera effects. So and even then, a lot of times, they talk about it being a visual effect or a computer effect, but that still needs to have an element of practical effects in as well. I mean, Neil did actually won an Academy Award for Gravity, where they had to build a rig to fly the actors in space. So he kind of learned on some of the stuff he'd learned when he was working on the Superman movies, and then improved it because he was able to, because he had another system whereby he had the computer that was going to be a lot less critical than putting somebody on very thin wires. You
Yeah.
need to.
Mm.
So that's a huge help. You still needed the effects, the practical effect of being able to roll them and turn them around. So, it's definitely, I mean, let's face it, you couldn't have done Lord of the Rings without computers.
No, no.
They were brilliant movies. So, I mean, just again, your imagination just can run wild. And in that, I mean, luckily they had script to work. When I say script, they had the books, which he insisted on keeping very closely to the books, like Harry Potter as well. They kept very strictly to the books, which you didn't have to go overboard with those things. They were good enough without trying to embellish it with ridiculous effects.
So you would say that the industry is still as exciting as it was when you were but different ways, perhaps.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think it's the opportunities are even better now than when I was involved in the 80s and 90s, because you do have computers. I mean, I remember trying to talk a producer probably in the early 80s or late 70s to do Carter on Mars, which they ended up doing a few years ago as John Carter. Actually, my nephew did, Chris did the effects on that. But that could only have been done with computer effects. It wasn't possible to do it back then because you just didn't have the capabilities of, you would have had to put people in suits or animate them. And again, we didn't have 3D animation, then it was all 2D pretty much. So yeah, I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Oh yeah, we did actually a question about the Carter 3D movie. Basically, the question was, what do you think of doing 3D films and that particular format?
I loved it. I used to buy them all. I loved it. My TV's 3D, and I used to like to go to the cinema in 3D. Unfortunately, of course, after a while, you watch the movie, become so used to it, and that's why the old movies would have something where a big thing would come out at you to remind you that you were in 3D. But I think it's beautiful. I think it's so worthwhile doing not on every movie, but on certain movies like these kind of Lord of the Rings type things is excellent. And Carter was better for being in 3D.
Oh yeah. Martin just wanted to say that the original cape for Superman the movie does still exist, and it's been refurbished and is operational again. So I imagine it might be in some museum.
Oh, good.
So that's.
There's actually a group that I did a thing for. I'll get their card here, which is interesting. I don't get the name wrong. It's called Cape Wonder. Well, if you can see the card. You know those guys? I mean, they're fanatical about Superman. It's amazing. He has a lot of Superman memorabilia as well.
Yes, he has a wonderful website with photographs and all sorts and podcasts.
Mate, well, I've got you. Hang on a sec. I've got to get up.
Okay.
I've got to get this in somewhere. That's my book.
Oh yes, I was going to come to that. Yes.
Yes, that was amazing. A good friend, actually a huge Superman fan, the guy that co-wrote it with me, Aaron Lamb. Aaron was taken to the movies aged 5 years old and saw Superman and was hooked on movies and became a movie maker himself. Actually got into documentary filmmaking. And he lived fairly close to me, and we had a mutual friend who told him about me because he was amazed that I was living in Canada. So he wanted to come and chat to me, which he did. And after talking a while, like we might be now, he said, would you ever thought of writing a book? I said, well, I haven't really thought about it. I'm not capable of writing a book. So he said, well, I'll write it. So we spent endless hours of him recording me we had to go through it on a movie by movie basis because it's difficult to remember so long ago.
Yeah.
But watching a movie and then going through it, we were able to put together this book, which I was very pleased because it actually does take it from when I was a kid,
Yeah.
going to the cinema and all the way through to pretty much, I think the last thing we mentioned, I can't remember what it is, but it might be going to Italy or something, getting an award there. But it's been, as they say, a ride.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, Martin's commented that the book is incredible and thoroughly recommends it. So I'm sure we'll get a copy of the book.
Well, the book is on Amazon, and I actually saw it recently that it's now Kindle as well.
Oh, good.
And also I've got copies here, and a few people have contacted me through my website, which is my name, colinchilvers.com. And if they want to buy it from me, then I'll sign it for them. Just, if they want it. A lot of people like that, so that's good.
I think I'll put that on my Christmas list, Colin. That sounds really good. So we've sort of come to the end of our times. I just wanted to finish up with any final thoughts you had about Superman the movie, what it means to your career, how you feel about it after all these years.
Well, I can thank Superman and Richard Donner for being such a good director. I can thank Superman as well, because on the first Superman, we were so intent on flying and getting him to look like he was flying that I stayed back in England to get that prepared when they came over to Canada, and they shot in Calgary, in that area, and they shot in New York, of course.
Yeah.
But the second one, I thought, because we had the flying, pretty much knew what we were doing, I thought, I'm going to go on location this time. So I came to Canada to shoot the Niagara Falls sequence in Canada. And as a result of that, I met a young lady that is my wife.
Oh, wonderful.
So that wouldn't have happened unless I had worked on Superman. And I've lived here since for 34 years or something. So, and that actually also put me in a position to be able to, when I started to work here, I was then able, through my agent in London, to get involved with directing commercials with a company in, first of all, in Toronto and then in Los Angeles, which then led to me being introduced to Michael Jackson to direct Smooth Criminal. So all of those things kind of came off of working on Superman. So, I've got the best part of my life to thank for Superman.
Oh, yes, a wonderful connection. I didn't want to end it tonight about talking about the late Ned Beatty. I don't know whether you remember working with Ned and Gene in the train.
After that movie, not after that movie. I mean, they were great. I mean, those two worked so well together in the movie. It was, it's amazing. Again, Richard Lester, the director, just brought all that out of them. Incredibly, it was. I can't think of anyone in that movie that was miscast.
No, they all seem very perfect. And I think Gene and Ned, obviously, it seemed like it was, a very fun, giggly atmosphere,
and of course, Miss Tessmacher. I mean, you can't, that's why it's difficult to watch the new Superman movies. You can't imagine anyone else but Chris Reeves being Superman.
No, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, what a loss. Amazing. Considering all the times we had him flying 60 feet in the air on thin wires. And he always said, if I fall 10 feet or 50 feet, I'm going to be in trouble. And then he fell off a horse, and that happened to him. It was incredible. I'll tell you one interesting thing. I think he was 24 years old. We must have started shooting. He was 24 years old, and they threw a party for him in London at this fancy nightclub. This was Charlie Greenlaw again, the Warner Brothers guy. And we went to the nightclub, had all these gifts for Chris, and he opened one gift up, and it was a model aeroplane. It was from Charlie Greenlaw, who said to him with a very straight face, he said, hopefully flying this will stop you having to go up in a real aircraft, because he had been taking lessons. Chris had been taking flying lessons in a aircraft and wasn't supposed to because of insurance.
Oh yes, of course.
But I don't think anyone knew about it. But obviously Charlie Greenlaw knew about it and said, you know, in other words, don't fly again.
Yeah.
I do Ian, or what's his name? Ian. I do prefer directing movies.
Yeah. I suppose it's the time factor, isn't it, and the budget, and that's why.
It's just you can get more into it. I mean, I love to do commercials because it was easy money. It was, you know, I think the most I ever shot was 30 days in one hit stint, which was a whole bunch of toy commercials.
Yeah.
But usually it was 1 or 2 or 3 days, and then you were done with it, and you made a lot of money. Just to get your teeth into a movie, like working with Michael Jackson was, you can imagine being on the set.
Yeah.
Let alone you're the one that's pushing everything around, telling them what to do. I mean, a great thing I had there was Michael, we had this set that was designed by a good friend of mine, Michael Klug, and it was a nightclub set. I don't know if you've seen the video, but it's a nightclub.
Yeah.
And Michael said that he liked the music to be loud. So I went to the producer and said, you know, Michael really wants the music to be loud. And he said, don't worry about it. You know, I've got it covered. Well, the next day when we got in to do rehearsals, they had these speakers that were maybe 2 feet square. And Michael said, just shook his head, went to talk to Frank DeLeo, his manager. And the next day, the speakers were like 6 feet by 4 feet, huge speakers.
Yeah.
But when you turned them on, the whole room shook to the beat of the music, which is that's what he wanted, was that feeling of the music. So he knew exactly what he wanted, and he would insist that he got it. So, I mean, he was that kind of a person that, you know, why would you argue with him? He knows what he wants. He was top of his game at the time. So great shame. All these people dying, it's not good.
No, it's not, is it? But obviously, you know, their legacy lives on in the music or their
film.
Yeah.
So it's,
you know, whereas most of us fade away, they're always there, which is obviously a lovely thing. Well, I think we should leave it there, Colin, because obviously just got out of time. So I want to say thank you very much for joining us this evening or your afternoon. I've really enjoyed chatting to you, and I'm sure everybody will join me in giving saying a big thank you to for you joining us. So we've got a few thank yous coming through at the moment. I feel like we've only just begun. So if you ever want to come back and talk to me for something else, you'd be very, very welcome.
Anytime. You've got my list of movies I can talk about. You have to shut me up, as you have done now, so that's good.
Well, I could listen to you all night, but obviously I've got other people wanting to come on.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to deal with those. But I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone that was joined us. You know, happy to have talked about it, and I'd be so proud of it.
Oh yes, well, it's a wonderful film to be involved with, and I want to thank you so much for taking time today to talk to us. It's been a real pleasure.
You're welcome. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Okay, so I hope everyone enjoyed that one. I'm just going to bring Diane on, and we'll start talking to Diane. Hopefully she's popped up in a second. I'm just going to get her to start her audio and video.
Am I sideways?
I can hear you, but I can't see you yet. Hang on, I'll see if I can get your video going in a second. Oh yes, hello. Yes, you are on your side.
There you go.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. It's really kind of you to take time out to speak to me. I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy it.
Excuse me, can you guys be quiet? Sorry about that.
That's okay. I was just saying we're very happy that you joined us this evening. I'm sure we're going to get some nice questions that come along for you shortly. So I wanted to ask you first of all, how did you become involved in Superman the movie?
Well, actually, it was odd. Lynn Stallmaster, who cast the film, had also cast me when I was a child in the Bing Crosby show. Oh, and I think several other things. So he knew me, and he just sent a picture to Donner, and I was cast.
Oh, very good. So
it was real simple. Donner said it was the mischievous look in my eye. Nice. But I also had a long history of working, so they knew they could trust me.
Yeah. You mentioned the Bing Crosby show. Do you have any particular fond memories of that show?
Very much so. Bing was really kind to me, and he. I was 12 or 13, and the most amazing thing was that he got me an invitation to meet the Beatles. Not only did I get front row center tickets at the Hollywood Bowl, but an invitation to actually meet them. So I still have my photos of me and the Beatles, which is really fun. I have a photo with each one of them, and that's a treasure.
Oh, that's very special indeed.
Yeah, he was great. One time I didn't know who he was. So he was real tickled by that because he was a huge star at that point. But I was a kid, so I didn't know who he was. So one time he came in with a Beatle wig and a newspaper that said, that had him with a Beatle wig on it. He thought he could get my attention if he had a Beatle wig. So he was really cute about it. And he plastered my dressing room with Beatle posters, and he just really indulged my my crush, my fandom.
So what was it like becoming an actor at such an early age?
Well, it was wonderful for me. I had my parents were very strict, and I wasn't allowed to be angry or anything, but yes, I get smacked or talk back. And the first show I did was a show called The Bill Dana Show, and the episode was called The Brat. And Bill Dana wore shin pads, and I got to kick him and be a real brat. And it was at that point I realized that acting, I could express myself in ways that I couldn't express myself in real life, and I fell in love with it as a young child, like 10 or 9.
Did you have was acting in the family? Was that kind of how you started out, or was it
my mother was doing it as well, and I just really wanted to. I had been in plays when I was really young, and I was just always attracted to it. My mother says I threatened to run away if she didn't get me an agent. But then she stopped my career at 13, which was really a bummer, and I had to restart it as I got older.
Oh, right. And was it easy to go back into it, or did that pause make any difference to you?
Oh, yeah, it was that happened to me about 3 times where I kind of ran away from Hollywood, or else my mother stopped it the first time, and then 2 times I kind of stopped it. And it was hard to get it back going. And of course, if I got older, it was harder. The first time I got it back going, I think I was 18, I was in college, and I was interviewing for something at 20th Century Fox, but Gene Roddenberry and Roger Vadim saw me. And they were evidently looking for a redhead to fill out their blonde, brunette, redhead, Asian, black scenario for women, for Pretty Maids All in a Row. And so they grabbed me, and I kept turning that movie down because I was in college, but they kept offering me more money. But then I never got to do my real role because I had a no nudity clause, and it called for nudity. So I ended up having a really small bit part in it.
Right.
But I worked on it for 11 weeks, got paid for 11 weeks. So that wasn't bad.
Oh, very nice. What's your lasting memory of Gene Roddenberry?
Gene Roddenberry?
Yeah.
I don't know. He had me back. He thought I was very androgynous. So he had me back to show that I was who he wanted for Star Trek when he was first, the type of person he wanted, but I wasn't old enough. So they didn't hire me for it, but they used me as a model for it. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But And then in Gene Roddenberry's biography, it talks about how mad Vadim was that I wouldn't pose for Playboy or do do the things to promote the film that he wanted to do. I was shy.
I mean,
Yeah.
do you feel that the industry has moved on a bit since, obviously when you were in the 70s and 80s in terms of the role of women, and do you think it's a better industry now?
Well, I've worked as a director, and I know that there's really no equality yet. There's very few female directors that direct major films.
Yeah.
I mean, there's more than there was. There was no role models. When I was a kid, Ron Howard was my peer, and I worked with him as well. And I think I would have been a director if I had been a boy.
Yeah,
but there was just no role models for me in that long ago at all.
Do you remember much about working with Ron Howard?
What?
Do you remember working with Ron Howard at all, and what was he like as a director?
I don't remember. I worked with him as an actor, and I don't remember. I don't remember on what, but I think it was a pilot or something. I have a picture of us. That's the only reason I remember.
Yeah.
And I also remember because he was such a gentleman. He interviewed me for something where I was going to play a drummer, Candy Stripes or something, one of his first directing things. And he wrote me a really nice note, when I didn't get the job, which was really sweet. Not that many people in Hollywood do that.
Oh, it's a nice thing to do. We had a question come in from Ian. He's not sure, but he wants to ask, were you in the Bill Dana show with Jonathan Harris of Lost in Space fame by any chance? Does that ring a bell?
With what?
Did you work with Jonathan Harris at all? He was.
I don't know.
Lost in Space.
The name of the episode was called The Brat. That's all. I can't remember who else was in it.
That's okay. Just think what else I want to ask you. So obviously, when Superman came along, what was it like filming with Jeff East and the whole sort of football sequence?
Well, it was a funny thing because we were up there. Donner was waiting for the perfect light for that scene, the football scene. Yeah. And so they got us up there, and we were just up there for weeks, not doing anything. And then we shot for like a day or two. So it was a lot of hanging out. We went to Banff, and I went with Donner and the special effects guy to Montana or someplace.
Lovely.
And there was a lot of downtime. And then they went up north to shoot some of the icy scenes, I think, and left us there waiting for the perfect light, which he did get. And I got one take on my close-up in the football field because the sun was going down. It was magic hour, and that was it. Yeah, it's
a great shot, isn't it? Do you remember Jeffrey Unsworth?
I do. Very nice man. It was dedicated to him.
Yes, it was obviously based out. He passed away before the film was released. I take it he didn't seem like he was unwell. It was probably just quite a shock to everybody that happened, I guess.
Yeah, it was surprising, but everybody seemed older to me, so it didn't surprise me because I was so young.
Yeah, that's good. That's a very good point. I was wondering, do you remember working with Jeff East and what it was like to work with Jeff?
Yeah, we had fun. I just remember he had to be in makeup for hours and hours every day. I felt sorry for him because he had a false nose and stuff, and it was just hours.
Yeah. Were you surprised that eventually he was dubbed with Christopher Reeve's voice? Because I don't think Jeff knew that was going to happen to him.
No, I don't know. I don't know if they planned that from the beginning or they just decided that later, but it made the transition work.
Yeah, I don't think they told Jeff, so I think it was a surprise to him. But maybe they had the idea, as you say, all along, perhaps. Did you see the recent extended version of Superman the movie that came out a couple of years ago? Because it's got a bit more of your footage.
I don't think I have seen it.
It is available on Amazon and a few other places. It's basically in the early 80s they put together a 3-hour, 8-minute version of the film with lots of scenes that were obviously removed because obviously back then you could sell more advertising space the longer the film was. So they put everything back that they could think of, and it's quite interesting because some of the Jeff E scenes don't have Christopher Reeve's dubbing over because obviously he only dubbed the so you get to hear Jeff's voice for the first time, which is quite
that's interesting.
And I think there's a bit more of your scene in the car driving to obviously eventually past the Kent farm, so it's worth taking a look at.
Okay, I've been amazed at how that few minutes on film so many years ago has been. It's such an iconic role that people are still interested. I'm still asked to do things every month. It's very peculiar.
Yes, I would have thought that you never would have dreamed that 40 odd, over 40 years later, it'd still be such I'm guessing, an important part of your life.
Yeah, it was an important film, I think, and the special effects I think were wonderful that you did them before CGI, just that they were all real.
Oh yeah, and I think they look more real than the films now because you have of somewhere somebody is in space and the weight of objects, and I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's some of the beauty of the film, I think. I saw it on a big screen. I did a short called Cyd Child that was in a film festival called The Director's View in Stamford, Connecticut, I think. And I ran into Dick there. They were doing Superman. They were doing a tribute to him. So I went to see Superman on a big screen then. That was like 10 years ago, but it was really fun to see it on a big screen.
Obviously, I have to ask you about Richard Donner because obviously he's obviously very recently passed away. I just wanted to know what he was like as a director.
I think he was brilliant, and all I have to say is me too.
Right,
personally.
Yeah, we'll move swiftly on. Do you have any particular other memories of shooting either the football scene or the or the car scene that you'd like to share with us?
Not really. It was fun being up in Canada. Our drivers were all rodeo guys, off season. That was kind of fun. I don't remember, the shoot was just so fast. And I'll tell you, I was nervous because, your first close up, you're nervous and you expect to do it 5 or 10 times. And that was it. And I was certain that my lip was twitching. And I was certain that on the big screen, I would go there and it would be 10 feet high, my lip twitching, and you can't notice it. It's funny. But you know how you kind of feel when you're nervous? You can feel a little twitchy face sometimes. Oh, yeah. And I got that, and I was really scared it would show up great big, but it didn't at all. So that's you guys' secret now.
Oh yeah, we won't tell anybody. Do you remember going to the premieres and what it's like to? So obviously, I take it that might be where you met some of the cast for the first time, maybe Christopher Reeve, and do you remember what that was like to attend the premieres? Yeah,
I had met Christopher Reeves at a party at Richard Donner's house, and I didn't meet Marlon while we were shooting, but I met him at a friend's wedding. Yeah. And I said I was in the, they had a lot of trouble with the residuals. They didn't pay us residuals for like 25 years. It screwed up my health insurance and everything else. Right. Because the Skulkins took their money to Panama and declared bankruptcy or something. And so SAG finally had a class action suit about it. Well, but I can't remember what thread of thought I was on.
Oh, you usually say might be Christopher Reeve and Marlon Brando and.
Oh yeah, I met Marlon Brando at a wedding, and I said I was in a movie with you, and he said, "What movie?" And I said, "Superman," and he said, "My condolences." And I think that's because the Salkins were kind of.
Well, obviously he'd been very unceremoniously cut from Superman 2 because they refused to pay him the percentage points that they would have had to if they used his footage. So I'm guessing that's
part of it, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. Although he did get an awful lot of money for the first
But
film.
see, the big actors, they were smart. They knew about these people in advance, and they had their money in escrow before the movie started. So they weren't, us small potatoes were like expecting things to be what they're supposed to be.
Oh yeah. I'm not just wondering because obviously you said that obviously the film is still, you obviously still get recognized for it and you get to do lots of Superman events. How important is the film to you in your career, and do you look back at it fondly?
It's just a novelty. It's trivia to me. I enjoy it. I enjoy that I was his first. It was the first real Superman, real superhero's girlfriend. It's an honor, but it hasn't. I think if anything, it wasn't good for my career. I may have been blacklisted. I'm not sure, but I didn't have any interviews for films after that, which was very strange.
Right. Because I would have obviously expected and obviously liked to see you in Superman 3, obviously where Lyle Lang does play a big role in that.
Well, that was partly my fault because I had moved to New York and that was before cell phones, and I hadn't given Screen Actors Guild my number or anybody else. And when I found out they were doing it, I wrote Richard Lester, and he wrote me back saying, we've looked for you and we just cast it.
Oh, right.
So I was doing underground theater with the guy that was the head of the theater department at Yale. It was real intellectually stimulating, but it was really bad for my career.
Right.
In terms of film and television.
Yeah.
I was working in an underground theater where we had to, where it was cold.
It sounds very, very interesting.
It was.
Was your first love the theatre?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
And do you have a favorite play that you've been in? Your favorite memory of theatre work?
I had the privilege to study with a woman named Peggy Fury, and the actors in my class, my colleagues were Sean Penn, Jeff Goldblum, Annette O'Toole was also in that class. A whole bunch of stars and stars kids, Dinah Manoff, Houston, what's her name? Angelica Houston, just a whole bunch of Eric Stoltz, bunch of people studied there. And we did all sorts of classic plays like Chekhov and Strindberg and Noel Coward. And I really had a good time. I did Chekhov with Sean Penn and Noel Coward with Jeff Goldblum. And I just had a blast of working in theater then. That was really soulful.
Do you have any memories you'd like to share of that play with Noel Coward and Jeff Goldblum? Because that all sounds fantastic.
Well, Jeff drove me crazy. He liked this. He did the Sanford Meisner technique, and they do an exercise called the repeat exercise, where, like, say something to me.
So did you have a nice day today?
Yeah, I had a nice day today.
Was the weather nice?
Was it really nice? So he would repeat my tone of voice with his words and my gestures, everything I did, and he wouldn't stop. I'd go, "Stop it, Jeff. It's driving me crazy." He said, "Oh, Diane, it's driving you crazy." And that was just the way he studied. That's the way he rehearsed. But it kind of drove me crazy. And Sean, he was broke, and I think he hitchhiked. He didn't have gas money. We really worked hard. We would rehearse 2 to 4 hours every day. And he would hitchhike from Malibu to my house in West LA to rehearse every day. And you could tell he was going to be a star. He just walked into a room and he just had charisma.
Yeah.
But he also worked his butt off at it. So I've been a fan of Sean's ever since. Our kids played together and stuff.
Oh, that's lovely.
But, yeah.
Did you do much work in the UK at all? Was it mostly in the States?
In the States.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think I had a question I just wanted to ask you from the audience. What's been your most what's been your favorite project of your career, and why?
Oh, I think my favorite things are the things I've directed. And I enjoy directing because it takes together, I'm also a writer. So I can take things I've written and direct it, and I'm using all my acting skills when I'm doing it because I'm directing actors. And I also use my acting skills in my writing, oddly enough, because you learn to develop characters. So directing is where it all came together for me, really. Unfortunately, I started too late to really have a career in it, but.
Well, it's obviously lovely to be able to write, direct, and act, and obviously do all of them.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention, obviously, you did a Kojak. I just wanted to ask about that episode.
Well, Telly Savalas called me from Pretty Maids All in a Row, and he was in that. So it was a fun role. It was a role of a hooker. I loved playing character roles. Yeah. But Telly was that's another kind of Me Too thing. He was kind of rude, to say the least.
Yeah, I think
he's kind of famous for it, actually.
Yeah, I don't think people could get away with. Well, hopefully, couldn't get away with the attitude and the culture and things that. No way.
They couldn't get away. Oh my God. There's no way people would get away with what they got away with when I was a young actress. And it was damaging. It was really damaging to me. Because it started when I was like 13. I mean, we shouldn't go there, but it's not the happy Saturday. But, Hollywood is all it's made out to be, really.
I mean, would you advise people to go into acting? Is it something that you would or is it very much a double-edged sword, a difficult profession? Is it something you've got to really it's got to be every fibre of your being to do it, or is it something that you think is the people I saw that really made it, like Annette would get up at 5 a.m. and do dance classes and stuff. Yeah. And the people that saw that I really made it put their all into it. And I was always interested in other things too. So, but I think you should only do it if you have to, if you really, really have to, I'm an artist because I have to be. For me, it doesn't matter if it's acting, painting, writing, directing, but I have to be doing something like that or I'm not comfortable in my own skin. It's got to be it's in your blood.
Yeah, but it's a hard life. So I think that, it's a struggle, how many people make it out of how many hundreds of thousands. And it's a hard life. So you have to really, really, really need to do it.
I mean, were you an actor who always likes the audition process? Because that obviously, I imagine, got to.
Oh no, that was the worst. The audition process was the worst, and I would do really well. It was always between me and one other person. I would do really well the first one, and then pretty good the second one, pretty good the third one, and then I'd get so nervous I'd blow it. The key, they kind of narrow it down. They narrow you down. It's between you and one other person, and then I didn't do a good reading.
I mean, how do you stop that from being very disheartening and soul destroying? Is it just sort of having a thick skin, or?
I think I went off and did theater instead. Things I had more control over.
Yeah. I mean, would you have liked to have done more films and things in your career, or are you happy with your body of theatre work?
Well, both. I'm really happy. I'm really happy I had a nice little career, but I would have liked to have worked with people like Sean and, you know, Anthony Hopkins and Meryl Streep. I would have loved to have done that just for the artistic value of it. But you know what I wouldn't want? I did Super Bowl commercials, and every time I'd go into a supermarket, people would recognize me. I wouldn't want to be as big a star that people recognize you everywhere you go. It'd be miserable. So
yeah, I mean, did you find that you got an awful lot of attention after Superman? Was that a bit difficult to get adjusted to?
I don't remember getting that much attention after it. But since I was a child actor, I was always used to getting, you know, I'd started when I was 8 or 9 or 10.
Yeah.
So I was used to it. So it's never affected me much.
Yeah, that's always been part of your career. I'm just going to just the last couple of questions before we wrap up. Is there a role that you would have liked to have played but didn't get a chance to? Maybe a classical role or anything that?
Yeah, there's a couple. When I was really young, there was a show called The Bad Seed, but I was too young for that. She was older than me, and it was just a really evil little girl, and I wanted to play that role. And there was also my first boyfriend was Johnny Provost, who was the boy on Lassie. Oh, yeah. And he was in This Property is Condemned, and there was a role I could have played in that, but I didn't get to. Oh, and the other one was I did Hawaii. I was Julie Andrews' sister in the movie Hawaii.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And my other sister in that movie was Heather Menzies, and she had either just come back to or was just going to Switzerland to shoot The Sound of Music. Mm-hmm. And I wished I'd been able to do that because I wanted to go to Switzerland.
Yeah.
And I also had a crush on that young boy in the movie, the older boy.
Oh, yes, of course.
Nicholas somebody.
Yeah. What's the future hold for you then? Do you have some projects that you're working on?
Yes, I'm writing a book right now. I've written 2 novels and a nonfiction book. And this is my second helping somebody with their memoir. Mm-hmm. I did a program of therapeutic writing. I teach homeless youth and people with dementia therapeutic writing, and I wrote a book about it, and that evolved into helping people with their memoirs.
Yeah.
So I do that, and I expect to also direct some more of my short stories, or maybe something longer someday.
That sounds...
So I'm not stopping.
No, it sounds really good. I wish you well with all your projects. I think we all look forward to seeing those. Just to wrap up, is there any final memories you'd like to share about Superman, or any closing comments about the film?
I just think it's a magnificent film, and Donner was a brilliant director. I have to say that. It was, and Christopher Reeve was a hero. And I'm honored to be Lana Lang.
Yeah, it's a wonderful film. And obviously, it's a great performance from yourself and the rest of the cast. It's I think it will always be forever. You know, the gold standard of, as it were, of superhero films. So so I just want to say thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, I think that half an hour has really just flown by. So I really enjoyed listening to you, and thank you for being part of our event tonight. It's been really appreciated, and I think if everyone should just join me in saying thank you very much for you joining us tonight. It was a real pleasure, and take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you. You too. Have a nice weekend, and thank you. It was a nice talk. My pleasure. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed that one. I'm just going to bring Cyd Child on a second. Just give me one moment. So let's get her video started. Oh, hi, Cyd.
Hi, Philip. How are you?
I'm very good. You?
Okay, thank you. I hope the light's okay, because as you remember, we had a problem with the light. So I've got a little bedside light here, which I hope is enough.
Yeah, that's fine. That's perfect.
That's good.
Have you had a nice week?
Not really, but it's improving. I had a knee replacement just over 2 weeks ago, and I'm still struggling with it, but getting there gradually, slowly.
Okay, good. Well, I hope it all goes well for you.
Thank you.
We just had a nice comment from Ian. I think it was Ian. Just welcome you to tonight's chat. So we've got a few fans watching.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So I just wanted to ask you, Cyd, because obviously you started off obviously very famously with the Avengers with Patrick McNee and Diana Rigg. How did you make the transition from doing stunts on TV to then motion pictures?
Well, you sort of gradually morph into it. You know, when I started off, I didn't know anybody. So it was just the Avengers. But each episode we did, I got to know more people, and they got to know me and trust me. So eventually other stuntmen would ask me to do other things. And I gradually got a little bit more and a little bit more. I think the first actual film I worked on was The Mercenaries. But you just gradually get a little bit more. As people get to know you and they know that you're not going to do anything awful and mess things up, then you get more. And then, of course, the Avengers ended, so I needed more anyway.
So I think one of your early film credits was Crossplot, obviously with
yes, Roger Moore. Yes.
Was that an interesting film?
Well, I only worked on it just the one day. I had to double for the heroine who was on a swing, and she had to fall off the swing, and Roger Moore had to catch her, which I thought was something to brag about.
Very much so, yes. And so I was wondering, how did Superman, the movie, come about? Because obviously, were you hired by somebody in particular?
Paul Weston was looking after the stunts on that. And I'd worked with Paul a lot on the Avengers, and a lot of the scenes that we were doing involved, you know, a crowd. And to get a crowd of stunt people together is quite an effort, really, because there's not so many of them, but he seemed to call on everybody he could. Yeah. And we were all there.
Because it was the earthquake sequence, wasn't it, if I'm not mistaken, that you were...
It was the earthquake sequence in Superman 1, and then in Superman 2 we were all the people in the street while the baddies are blowing people down the street and blowing things up and all that kind of thing. And in that, if you could make yourself look like somebody else, you could work again, you know, and do different bits until they gave you a line. And as soon as you were given a line, then you had to go because the camera had focused on you. I had to do a bit where I had to sit down on the curb with rocks falling around me going, Superman, help us. And then that was it. It was bye. But I had a big bag of wigs. I think I was about 7 different people, different times.
Yeah, I think everybody's going to be now looking at the scene again and trying to spot all your different appearances.
Yeah, it's all the... Sometimes I had my own hair, which was long and dark at the time. And then I had short, dark wigs and blonde wigs and red wigs and all different kinds. Because I originally had them, I got them when I was on the Avengers because with Linda, there was a disastrous effort to change the hairstyle. And they bleached us and bleached us and bleached us till it was all falling off. Yeah. And Ray Austin said to me, you need to do something about that, get some wigs, because you can't work for anybody looking like that.
Yes, this very sort of blonde look you had for about 3 episodes, wasn't it? And then they obviously saw.
Yes, it was all falling off. So eventually they decided we would have dark wigs. When Brian Clements came back, he said he didn't like her blonde, so we had dark wigs. And we were finally allowed to cut our hair underneath. So Linda and I both had, you know, practically crew cuts. We had really, really short hair.
I had a little question come in for you. The Metropolis scene in Superman 2 looked like it was freezing cold to shoot. Was that the case?
Oh dear, we've messed up then if it looked freezing cold, because it was freezing cold, but it was supposed to be summer. So we had to try and look as if it was sweltering hot and wear summer clothes.
I think it's probably there's only maybe 1 or 2 moments that might give the time of year away, but that's probably just us super fans sort of watching.
I see. Yes. Yeah.
Audience, so,
No, we did. The first night, it was night shooting, which made it worse. And the first night, we all wore thermal underwear. And then the second night, when we turned up, the man in charge of wardrobe said, you can't do that tonight. We're not doing that anymore because there's a chance it will show with the wind blowing all the skirts around. So he'd been down and cleared Marks and Spencer out. He had a huge supply of Marks and Spencer's underwear. And he said, take your pick, but you can't wear thermals. So we had to wear summer dresses, summer underwear, and then we all had big, thick clothes on, snow boots and everything you could to try and keep warm. And then when the assistant said it's next shot, you had to start taking it off and getting ready. And it was really cold. I think it was December, something like that.
Yeah, I think it was about that.
Yeah.
And so it was quite a few nights that you were working on that sequence.
Yes.
And did you have much interaction with the main cast, either the Krypton villains or Christopher Reeve, or was it very much you guys to one side?
Well, it was mainly us. They had the artists doing certain odd bits, but we weren't really interacting with them. We were being blown down the street or falling over or whatever, something or other like that. The bit that I thought was funny was when Superman appeared in all his gear and, looking all wonderful, and he had to have carrier bags on his feet to keep the soles of his shoes clean, because when Superman flies, he has to have clean feet. And there were various small children that had come to see Superman and get his autograph, and they were sort of standing staring at him with their mouths wide open, and why Superman got carrier bags on his feet.
And I'm guessing it wasn't that warm for him either, because I imagine it's quite
no.
quite cold as well. What was your impression of the set? Because obviously it was they created quite a bit of the Metropolis out to exterior. What was it like seeing that for the first night? It
was amazing. It was really amazing. It looked like New York, and it was all foreshortened, so that it looked as if it went on for miles, but it didn't. If you went far enough, you would be sort of like a giant, because everything's gone smaller. But it was very cleverly done.
Oh yeah.
And did you find Roy Scammell? You were going to look for Roy Scammell on his roller skates.
Oh yes, I have seen it, and yeah, I did recognise him. Yeah, so it's amazing because you meet, obviously you've got these famous stuntmen like Roy or Paul or Armstrong, and only afterwards do you think, when you start to rewatch films, you think, oh, that's him, and you don't realise how many things they've been involved with.
Well, that's right. We were all trying to look like different people.
And I think you were saying that obviously your autobiography is going to be published shortly, and the list of films and TV that you in your book is a lot more.
Yes, it'll be in there.
Yeah, there's a lot more credits than there is, say, on IMDb. So there's lots of things that people probably don't know that you've been involved with.
Well, yes, I have noticed that things like IMDb don't seem to get all their facts right, and they miss out bits, or I don't know who programs it. I did try once to say that's not right, but I didn't get anywhere, so I gave up.
Well, I've got a IMDb Pro account, so I'll get a copy of your autobiography when it's released, and I'll see then if I can.
Oh, right, thank you. Yes.
I'll do that. So going back to Superman, the movie, obviously it's the earthquake sequence. Were you quite surprised when that was then most of your stuff was cut, wasn't it, from the?
It was. I was very surprised. We did a lot of work on it. We were there for some time, and doing quite a lot of stuff. And I can't remember which director was doing it, because it was second unit, but he seemed to be very pleased with what we were doing. So I was looking forward to seeing it. And we went to the cinema to see it, and it just wasn't there. And it wasn't until you told me about the extended version.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my husband had to watch 3 hours of Superman to see a sort of short burst of me at the end, just to prove I did it.
Did he enjoy the experience, or was it?
Well, actually, we did enjoy watching the film because there were lots of bits in there that weren't in the film that was in the main cinemas. And a lot of that was Lex Luthor, which we particularly like. We find him quite amusing.
I mean, what was your feeling when you first saw the finished film? Do you think it would be as good as it turned out?
Yeah, I always thought it was a good film. And I mean, Richard Donner was a lovely person and good at what he did. And I found it quite amusing. He somehow or other found a motorbike that's got 3 wheels. I don't know what you call that. Is it a trike?
Yeah, I would have thought.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be part of the set. I'm not sure, but he'd taken a fancy to that, and he kept riding around the set, talking to everybody and making sure they knew what they were doing, and asking if everything was all right. And he'd go off on this motorbike.
Yeah, sounds like he was quite a fun guy on set.
Yeah, he was a very nice man. Yeah.
So obviously he would have done a bit of directing with you. It sounds like he was.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, because he said to me, "Can you fall down and shout, help us, Superman?" And I said, "That feels a little bit awkward for me. Can I say, Superman, help us?" And he said, "Yeah, that's fine."
Was there much of a difference when it came to Superman 2 compared to the first one from your perspective, or was it a fairly much similar sort of experience?
Well, we made them both at the same time. So when we made them, we didn't know which bit was going to be in 1 or 2.
Yeah. Because obviously at a certain point, Superman 2 was obviously put on hold because it was obviously a huge undertaking to do films like that, back to back. So did you then? Obviously, you then came back after some time, and then did
Yeah.
Leicester.
Yeah, every so often you'd get called back to do something else, and you think, "Oh, they're still doing it. It's been going on a long time."
Yeah. I mean, were you quite surprised to hear of all the production issues and things? Because I assume you wouldn't have perhaps known at the time.
No, we didn't know anything about it. We would just do as we were told, come along when we were called, do what we were asked to do. It would only be if somebody said to you, "Oh, did you know?" But most of us didn't anyway, so we just did what our job was.
Yeah, I get a sense that they kept it very, very private, just amongst certain people, and
yes,
yeah, or anything like that. I think you did tell me that you did meet Christopher Reeve at one point, and what was that? What was that like to meet Christopher?
Well, I didn't really meet him properly to talk to. He and I didn't know who he was at the time, but there's a bunch of us leaving to go up to the set to work, and this tall, good-looking chap opened the door, and I thought, I've got a feeling that's Superman. But he used to, the judo club that I belonged to, he used to frequent, there was a pub on the corner, just around the corner, and he used to go there fairly often. And Friday nights, my husband and all his friends would pop in there before going home, and they'd see him and they'd all start teasing. They'd be sticking one arm up in the air and singing the Superman anthem, just to tease him.
Yes, so he sounds like he had a good sense of humour about it. And
oh yes.
Didn't take himself too seriously.
No.
Would you have had a chance to have met either Terence Stamp or Sarah Douglas or Jack O'Halloran at all?
No, we didn't actually meet them. They were working themselves. They were doing their acting bit while we were all falling about all over the place. So you'd see them in the distance.
Yeah.
And you'd know what was happening, but you wouldn't actually get close to them. We were too busy falling about down the street and things like that.
Oh yeah. It sounds like it would take a long time to do that. I did have a question come in. When working with special effects, how important is trust and communication between you and the special effects team to make sure things go safely?
Oh, it's very important. It's good to know that you've got somebody that is safe to work with. You don't want to be working with somebody that's dealing with explosions and petrol and flammable things, and you don't know them or you don't trust them.
I mean, one thing I heard recently, I did an event with somebody who worked with Richard Lester, who obviously did Superman 2 and Superman 3, and it did seem that Richard Lester was obviously pushing people a bit more when it came to doing stunts, and it wasn't quite as safe as perhaps some other films. But I assume from your point of view, Superman 1 and 2, the same quality was there, the same safety, the same atmosphere.
Well, yes, yeah. Paul Weston was looking after us, and we all trusted Paul.
And did you have much to do with Vic Armstrong at all? Because he was on those two pictures.
Well, he'd be another one of the gang, really. I mean, I know Vic Armstrong and worked with him on different times, but there was nothing that I had to do that involved Vic.
And I had a question come in from Ian. He just wondered whether you have seen other incarnations of Superman on the big screen, the Henry Cavills or some of the TV series, and what you might think of them compared to your films.
Well, I've got 3 children, and of course they were into all of that. So we used to watch the TV series and whatever film would come up, because they're huge Superman fans.
And what do they think about you having been involved with those films? Well,
I think it seems a bit unreal to them. I'm not sure if they really believe it. Try telling them. I think my second son, I think he's starting to believe it now. Probably because, he sees these things that you put up, An Evening with Superman and Cyd Child on it. And he's starting to believe it.
Oh, well, if I've helped, that's...
Yes, you've helped.
Yeah, I suppose that's the problem with perhaps being behind the scenes a little bit, and that you...
Yeah.
Did that ever annoy you at all in your career, that people thought, oh, that's the actor, and you'd like to say, well, actually, I did this, but I suppose you're happy being in the background?
Yeah, I mean, you have to get used to it to begin with, because you think you've had this huge adrenaline rush doing something that, you hope looks really, really good. And then you think you want a little bit of acknowledgement for it. But then at the time when I first started, they didn't like to admit that there were such things as stunt doubles. And I gradually got that if I could make the actor look good, and they thought that she'd done it, that was good. I was happy with that.
Yeah, I think you're right, because obviously part of the illusion is to make it look like that's
yes.
lovely.
Yeah.
If they're going, oh, look, there's Cyd, isn't it nice to see Cyd? Then perhaps
yes.
slightly
Yeah.
wrong. So,
well, it's the character, really, because you want Emma Peel to look fantastic, and you're working at it together.
I mean, what is the secret to doubling people in a successful way?
Well, it helps if you have roughly the same build, and you can make yourself look the same. And then if they put you in the same clothes and you have the same hairstyle and the same makeup, then you're going a long way towards it. And then you need to try and morph the actions into each other. So you need to watch that actress and see how she finishes her bit, so that when you start on your bit, which is the next take, you start with the same kind of movement. So you have to try and move like them, so that the only way anyone's going to know is if they get a full face shot. And then with a bit of luck, if you go past quickly, they might not see it. Of course, it gets found out now because people have got DVD players and they've got a way of freezing the screen and seeing who it was who did it.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, thinking about Superman 2, obviously, because there's a lot of wind machine work. Do they ever put you on wires, or is it all just throwing yourself about? And
I think it was all throwing ourselves about. They had, I think it was 3, might have been 2, but I think it was 3 Spitfire engines on frames with wheels. They could put them where they wanted to be, and they would start those up and get them going at full speed. and then there'd be a man in front of them throwing bits of newspaper in front of it, so that would get blown down as well. And then, well, I mean, that would give you a bit of impetus anyway, and then the rest was up to us to try and make it look good.
And was it more difficult to do, say, the earthquake sequence, where, because obviously, did they have gimbals and things that were moving the ground and things, or was it more?
No, what they did was they, the actual earthquake sequence in Superman 1, when we first got there, they'd got the fronts of the sets. So you had the fronts of the buildings, and they were attached by big heavy wires to cranes, and the cranes would shake them around in different directions. We didn't know that to begin with. They took us onto up the lot it was, and we went up the lot at Pinewood, and they put us in these caravans, and we were told to stay there. And we didn't know why. And we stayed there for quite a long time, and we started thinking, why are we here? You know, has somebody forgotten us? What are we supposed to be doing? And then when we were allowed out, we found out that they'd been rehearsing with these cranes, shaking the buildings around. And actually one of them had fallen flat on its face.
Oh, right.
So that was encouraging. And we had to climb up the back of the front with ladders to get up to the windows, so that you could pretend you'd been in a building. And then it would all get shaken all over the place, and you had to partly improvise because you weren't quite sure where you were going to be going.
Yeah. I mean, the Superman movie was obviously very complex when it came to stunt work, and then there were a couple of serious accidents. In one case, or maybe even two, fatal incidents. With there was the scene with Air Force One where Superman is underneath the wing after it gets hit by lightning, and I think during a rehearsal, the wing that was obviously several tons snapped, and it crushed somebody that was below it. And I think Paul Weston also had his wire broke, and I think he broke his collarbone. Did you ever hear about these things when you were on the film?
No, I didn't hear about them. Things like that they don't really want to talk about too much.
Yeah, and I think even to this day, it's not overly sort of a part
of
documentaries and things like that. So I just had a couple of questions just to finish off on. Do you think there's a lot more concerns over health and safety these days, which may make it more difficult to do stunt work? Is there more? Do you think stunt work's more difficult sort of now?
Well, I haven't been involved for a few years now, but it was getting more complicated. But I think we were still in the sort of Wild West area of it a bit. I don't know quite how much control health and safety have got over it now, but I think a lot of it can be done with computer imagery, which is a bit strange. But then there are always things that you've got to have a real person to do.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, did the industry change quite dramatically in your time, and what might have been the couple of major changes?
Well, the thing is that they make a film and they do a certain amount of stunt work in it, and hopefully everyone's impressed and it's wonderful. But then the next film that comes along feels it's got to do better than that. So they try and make it more spectacular or more dangerous. So that's how it continues.
Oh yeah, definitely. We did have a couple of other questions just to finish off. Do stunt performers ever have to insure themselves, or does the production company always cover that sort of side of things?
We have to insure ourselves. When I first started on the Avengers, we didn't have insurance.
Right.
And if somebody was killed, which somebody was when I just started, we all had to have a whip round for his family. But then eventually things were changed, and Equity, the union, managed to have a stunt register. So you could only do stunts if you were on the stunt register, and you had to be insured. And they arranged an insurance scheme that we had, which, you would say what kind of things if you were doing something, say you were going to be doing aerial stunts, that would be going above and beyond what people normally did. So you would pay a little bit extra for that. And hopefully then, if something happened to you, you would have an allowance while you were injured. or there'd be a payout if you were killed.
So it was quite precarious sort of situation, but it was something that never sort of fazed you. I suppose maybe being young, you didn't sort of.
No, when you're young, you think you can do anything. You don't think that anything awful is going to happen to you.
Well, I've always been afraid of everything, so unfortunately, I went through a period.
It's like a challenge, can you do it?
Yeah. I just have another question. When you're arranging a fight scene, can you advise the director where to put the camera to make it more realistic? Do you have that?
Yeah, you can suggest it to him if you think he's not putting it in the right place. Or else you might just change your fight a little bit so that it looks better from where he's decided to be.
And do you find most directors are quite open to that kind of input? Well,
I haven't worked with every single director. I think that directors are like people; they're all slightly different.
I know you've covered this question before, but there's obviously people that might not see other. What's the most dangerous stunt you've performed in your career?
That's a difficult one to say, because how do you compare them against each other? I had to do a stunt on For Your Eyes Only where I was supposed to be hit by the dune buggy. That was quite nasty. And then there's other things you do where there's fire, and don't like fire very much. But I mean, when you do it, but if you don't like it, it makes it nastier than it might be,
Would the money go up in terms of all this is awarded?
It can do. You have a chat with the stunt arranger, and he might say, well, you'll get an adjustment for this. So you get an extra sum of money on top of what your daily rate might be, which means that if you've got to do this particular thing, whatever it is, each time you do it, you would get that extra piece of money, unless it's your fault. If you did it wrong and they had to do it again, then you do it again for free.
All right.
Yeah.
I did. There's a question. Well, not a question, but a good point that Ian has made about TV shows like Star Trek, The Avengers, in that stunt performers seem to be very obvious when you watch these shows again. But of course, back then you had a very small television set, and I got
that's right.
Monsters, high definition, 4K, and so I don't know whether you sort of look back and things and think, oh, I wish, but of course it was a different sort of time.
It was different. The Avengers in particular had very good quality recording because they recorded on film, but not everybody did. Sometimes they just did it on video, sometimes it was live. So you wouldn't get caught out quite so easily. But of course, nowadays, everybody's got a high definition TV or Blu-ray or whatever, and they can freeze frame and they go, aha, spotted you,
Yeah, I mean, even the stuff that's shot on videotape, they're releasing more of that and on upscaled formats and things.
Yeah, they clean it up and make it look good. Yeah.
What was there? Obviously, doing stunts live, I assume, did that make them any more risky, or was it more pressure?
I didn't do very many like that. I think I only did one. But it does get a little bit worrying because you know that the story is going to continue after your stunt is finished. So you've got to make sure that you get it right and you finish where you're supposed to, and that it looks how it should.
And they always went well from your perspective. You never had anything that it all was okay when you came to live stunts. Nothing.
No, it was all okay. Yeah.
The last couple of questions I have. One is, what was your favourite stunt in your career?
Favourite? I don't know. I mean, the favourite one I suppose to look at is that one with the dune buggy on For Your Eyes Only. The least favourite one was also on For Your Eyes Only, where the yacht had to run us down in the sea.
Oh yes.
And if you look at it on the film, we look like a couple of football balls floating around on the sea. You don't really get a good look at us. So you think, well, no, it's not really sort of doing anything for you. But we had to duck dive and swim down while the yacht went over us. And the sea was very salty there, and very buoyant. and I felt that I wasn't getting anywhere. I was swimming like crazy, but I felt I was still floating on the surface. And you can hear these engines getting louder and louder and louder and louder. And that was quite scary.
But yeah, it's a brilliant, both sequences and Few Eyes Only are brilliant, the ones you mentioned. So they're real classics. So my last question is just, so how does your work on Superman and those films fit in your body of work? And are you still surprised people are still asking you about these films some years on?
No, I'm not surprised anymore. I was surprised when people first started asking after the Avengers, when it had been finished for years. But then I realized everybody's got their own thing. I mean, my husband's into Kelly's Heroes. He and his friend can sit and watch Kelly's Heroes, and you don't need to put the sound on because they'll do the dialogue for you. They know the whole thing. And you know, you've got people who are into the Avengers, you've got people who are into Space 1999 or Doctor Who. It's whatever anybody's interested in, really. It's nice that they are, actually. It's nice that, you know, that the interest is still there.
And obviously, we say your children obviously are big superhero fans, and is it something that you also enjoy seeing these films, and do you get the same thrill from seeing them?
Yes, it's especially nice when you haven't seen them for a while and you see them again, and you see people that you used to meet all the time, and there they are again on the screen, and they haven't changed. They're still there, the same. You know, it's quite nice.
I mean, obviously there was a lot of hype about Superman, that you believe a man could fly, and were you quite surprised that they could achieve what they did? Did you?
Yes, I was. I thought they did an amazing job. It was really good.
And again, it holds up so well today, doesn't it? So
it does. Yes. Yeah.
And I think,
there was a good atmosphere on Superman 1 and 2. It was a good film to work on.
Yeah, they sound like a fun, you know, obviously it's a very fun genre that they're playing with, but also
yes,
wonderful people involved in front of, and obviously behind the
yes,
and obviously there's been so many Superman films and TV series since then, but
yes, that's right.
Can't beat those two films, the first two. I don't think so. It must be wonderful to be a part of that legacy.
Yeah, so I always think Christopher Reeve was the best one.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. There's just something very special about performance, and obviously the man himself, of course. So well, I think
that's right.
I think that's a wonderful place to end. Unless you've got any other comments you'd like to make. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us, and obviously I hope everybody enjoys the evening thoroughly. Hopefully I'll speak to you again sometime soon. And
yes, well, I hope everybody's enjoyed their Superman evening.
Oh, I'm sure it has. I think it's been a great success. We've had lots of good questions and things throughout the night. So we all look forward to obviously your autobiography coming out. Is it still on course for August?
Yes, I did actually hear from my publisher a couple of days ago. I apologise for not being in touch, but he's been absolutely frantic. He's promised me a total update on Tuesday. He was going on about the problems he'd had with it. He's obviously working on the cover, which is great. So hopefully it shouldn't be too long. He did originally say August, which is next month. Yeah. So hopefully there should be some announcements in the not too distant future.
Well, we'll look forward to getting that, Cyd.
I'll be sure to tell you.
Oh yes, please do. So everybody just wants to stay on for a few minutes. I've just got a final thing to go through with everybody before I close the evening. But Cyd, obviously, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope to talk to you again in the future.
Okay, well, thanks, Philip.
Thanks, Cyd. Take care.
See you again. Bye.
Bye. So I just want to say to everybody, thank you very much for joining us this evening. I hope you've enjoyed everything that the special guests have had to say. I do have one final thing to finish tonight. One of the people that couldn't join us was Miss Valerie Perrine, but she did want me to read out a little message that she had for everybody. So I just want to read out what Miss Perrine has written. She said, I was offered the role of Eve Tessmarker, so I didn't audition for the role. I did have input on the character, and I played her a certain way, and with Dick Donner's direction, she really came to life. The costumes were already designed, so they were already in place. I loved working with Gene Hackman and Ned Beatty. Gene is an amazing actor and incredible to work with. He is the gold standard of all Lex Luthors. Ned was great too. He brought so much to Otis, and his performance was incredible. I loved Dick Donner. What an amazing genius of a man and a filmmaker. He brought so much enjoyment to the world and will be missed. We definitely had a lot of fun in Canada with Larry Hagman. Chris Reeve brought so much to Superman. He didn't take it, he took it very seriously and didn't fall into the campness that it could have been. The way he created two different and separate characters of Superman, of Clark Kent and Superman, was genius. How he brought humor to the role as well makes him the best Superman. Dick definitely made a magical film. He made us all believe a man could fly. I think we all know it was something special at the time, but no one could have known that the film would become the success that it later did. How it became the blueprint that all other superhero films try to become. Seeing the film for the first time was incredible. It made you believe a man could fly. The story was an epic piece, which Dick crafted into something no one else could have done. I think the film definitely holds up today. It's the gold standard for all other superhero films. Its influence is felt in every superhero film since. The film has a very special place in my heart. So much talent on one project. I have very fond memories of the experience. I miss Dick, Chris, Margot and Ned. Their spirits and legacies will live on forever with this film for generations. It's had a huge impact. I thought I would be remembered for playing Honey in Lenny, but I think Miss Tess Barker will be a lasting part of my legacy too. Thank you all for coming to the event today and watching and participating in this event and honouring Dick Donner and Ned Beatty. Without Dick, this film would never have been made, and we wouldn't have never believed the magic of dreams. And we never would have believed in the magic of dreams and that a man could fly. I hope you all enjoyed tonight's show. Valerie also wanted to tell me, for those people, some fans might know that she does suffer from, so I'm just getting her message up that she sent me earlier today. So Valerie unfortunately can't join us because obviously she does suffer from Parkinson's. So it made a personal appearance impossible, but she did very much want to be involved in this event. Hence her message that I just read out to all of you. She did, and I wanted to pass this on from her. She did say that she has a GoFundMe page to help with her Parkinson's and medical expenses. And there's also a link to the documentary that she's got coming out shortly. So if anybody was interested in finding out about the GoFundMe page or her upcoming documentary, if you go to valeriemovie.com, all the information is there. She also wanted to let you guys know that the documentary about her career is being released next Friday, the 16th of July. Again, obviously there's information on our website as well. So she very much wanted us to obviously enjoy the event, and she hopes it's gone very well. And I will be sending her a copy of this recording. So although she wasn't here in person, she was very much here in spirit with us this evening. And for me, her role as Miss Tess Marker is a huge part of the success of Superman 1 and 2. So that's it for this evening. I hope you all found this very interesting and enjoyed hearing what our special guest had to say. So thank you very much for joining us. Hoping to do some more Superman events at some point. And so I just want to say thank you very much to everybody that's watched. I hope you have a great weekend and hope to see you again soon. Okay, take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.